For my hotspot project, I'm going to be discussing two epidemics, one being Ebola and the other the Black Plague. And I will elaborate and share the similarities and differences among the two illnesses. But first, I will introduce the two. The origins of Black Plague have been narrowed down to a single source since its first outbreak during the Middle Ages. Now, the Black Plague, what's significant about it is that it is derived from a bacterial infection. Um, the first notable account of, or one of the main causes for Black Plague developing was that trade ships of Genoese descent, which is a port city in Italy, came into contact with flea infested rats that were carrying the bacteria that we now know as Yersinia pestis. Now, for Ebola, Ebola is described and classified as a viral infection. The two instances of Ebola being recorded are in 1976 and 2014, respectively, the most common one that we all know. Um, the way for someone to contract Ebola or the Black Plague is through physical contact, so the sharing of any bodily fluids or open wounds, and as well as coming into contact with non domesticated or rogue animals that have the virus. Next, I'm going to discuss the similarities and differences among the Black Plague and Ebola. First, I'm going to start with the symptoms and severity to its victims, which are the similarities. Ebola and the Black Plague, what's common about their symptoms is that they're flu-like in nature. So really, it's any aggressive or kind of exaggerated symptoms that you would see with the flu. So that can range from with very extreme and maybe in common cases, internal and external bleeding. It attacks your lymph nodes and they start to swell and they get agitated. Kidney and liver complications. If once the disease progresses long enough, you will have problems. And muscle and body aches and extreme fatigue and fever. You will experience that. And in terms of severity to its victims, both the viruses, because there was no available cure, because medicine was not as developed as it is now today, they really developed in a massive epidemics. And also because population density was, a lot more prominent because a lot of people are living in extended families. So they're with, mothers, brothers, daughters, sisters, like extended family, and they're all close and living in an enclosed space, like just like one house, just living inside one house. So that causes the disease to spread, a lot quicker and more efficiently. So what happened was that there would be a significant decline in the population density, and mortality rates began to increase. So it started becoming common practice for people to, bury the dead because they believed that the dead should receive a fair burial, and they didn't just want to leave bodies laying around. People were very superstitious at the time. And as that happened, social stability began to weaken. Public hysteria began to increase and grow because a lot of people had a lack of knowledge of the disease and what it's capable of, and really that caused people to become distrustful and suspicious of one another, and starting to put blame on each other for what's happening in their community. Two factors that really made it deadly was that a lot of people were living together, and a lot of families were living, close and in compacted areas, and like you could say, like you could be living with your uncles and your niece and nephew and stuff, and it was like extended family, like everyone's together, so that really can contribute to it passing on a lot quicker. So as that happened, families began to break apart and people start to die and mortality rates began to increase. Mass burials of the dead began to, become a normal practice because, you can't just walk around with bodies laying in the streets. So, and those people are very, superstitious and, they're very superstitious and, they believe in Christ and they want to give the person a proper burial as a part of that. So that would happen. A labor shortage began to develop within West Africa and Europe, and that would also lead to social stability And another thing that created social stability was that people would, kind of become suspicious of one another because if people are just dying at your feet and there's you're not educated enough, you don't know what's going on, no one's telling you anything, you know, um, people aren't trusting each other, public hysteria, is really at an all-time high. It's a crisis really happening, amongst your very eyes, and people become distrustful and very suspicious of one another. So that plays a role in the severity of to the people that are affected, and have to deal with it and experience it and try to combat it the best they can. As far as cures go, there is no cure for Ebola. Um, there wasn't a cure then in the 1970s, and in 2014 there's not a cure now. So it is very severe, and that's creates one of the differences of social and economic implications that I like to talk about later on as one of my points. Um, as far as cures for the Black Plague, now that's a different story. Um, at the time when Black Plague first came out, it's obvious there wouldn't be a cure because medicine was not developed, and medicine was not very efficient. And at best, you would just go to a priest and ask for a penitent rite, or pray or ask for a blessing or a healing to have your sickness be removed from your body. But that's really the best you could do at that time. But now, in the 21st century, they have antibiotics for the Black Plague because it is a bacterial infection. And again, that's what makes it different from. Um, that's what makes it different from, or that's what makes its severity, or I'm sorry, that's what makes its social and economic implications different from Ebola, because Ebola is a virus, and a virus needs a host to sustain itself and survive and be successful and thriving. So for bacteria, bacteria is everywhere, and you can just take certain antibodies to help combat them and challenge them and not let them survive in certain conditions. The timetables for infection. Let me. Sorry, 1 second. Shoot. Here we go. Okay. The infection and incubation periods for Ebola last from 2 to 21 days. So that's about that goes from either 2 days to about 3 weeks till you find out that you're infected, and you have to go off the symptoms that you're given. So that'll help kind of tell you what you're dealing with here. And the Black Plague, it happens very quickly. Actually, it takes about 2 days to develop, and you start to see signs about then. Now, the social and economic implications. The social and economic implications were very different, and for certain reasons why. Because with new medication and technology helping to advance some antidotes and cures for the Black Plague, if someone is to catch the Black Plague, it won't affect the victim as much, where they'll possibly just miss only a week of work, and then it won't affect the economy in any way. The person can just take a leave of absence for a short period of time and get right back to it after a couple days of rest. Now with Ebola, that's quite a different story, because no cure is available. Treatment is kind of just prolonging the inevitable, and just So, in conclusion, the social and economic implications of Ebola and Black Plague are severely different, because someone with the Black Plague now um, is able to treat their condition quite swiftly, and it's not as much of a painful process like it was back in the old days, basically during the middle Evil Ages. But with Ebola, it's quite a different case. If you find yourself with Ebola, it's yeah, there's a 90% chance that you will um, be deceased in the next couple of weeks.